I'm Jessie, and you're watching This Old Thing. This is The Girl in the Centerfold by Saray Marsh. She is Playboy's Playmate of the Month for 1967, January. She wrote this book in 1969, so basically right after her experience. And Playboy had only been around for about 15 years when she was Playmate of the Month. So it has super interesting insight into the whole world and the history of Playboy that just it's just a super rare and interesting tale. And I found this at a thrift store. I was very lucky to come across this book, and it's not that easy to find. So I thought that I would start reading it to you guys chapter by chapter, and you guys seem to really like it. And a lot of you guys are really interested in Playboy history like I am, and love the Girls Next Door and Girls Next Level, and just reading all the books about Playboy that you can get your hands on. So thanks so much for joining. We're on the very last chapter. If you need to go back and start with chapter 1 or get any chapters that you've missed, go to the playlist called The Girl in the Centerfold, and it has every single chapter. Only one set of chapters is combined, which is chapter 2 and 3 I did together. But then I decided that I didn't like doing that because it would be too confusing for you guys to find each chapter. So if you're looking for chapter 3, it's because it's in chapter 2. But all the other ones are chapter by chapter. So here is chapter 14, and it's the very end. So I hope you guys enjoy. Having described my Playboy Playmate adventures, I guess I should end the book. But more than a year has elapsed since Renee Rossini and I performed our "You're fired, no I quit" routine. And for me, a great deal happens in a year. I want to describe some of the happenings briefly so the person I am today may be better understood by everyone, especially myself. Since leaving the Playboy Club in June 1967, I've been a freelance model, which means I have not been under a contract with any one agency. I find jobs where I can and when I can, obtaining them from various modeling agencies, booking agents, casting directors, photographers, and word of mouth. It is a precarious way to make a living, offering about the same security as bomb disposal work. In the last year, I've done a little bit of everything, with emphasis on the little and bit. I've decorated ads for sailboats, sunglasses, and bikinis, posed for book covers, confession magazine covers, and record album jackets, performed in television commercials and a couple of movies, decorated conventions, and served as Miss This or Queen of That. For such tasks, I've earned as little as $25 and as much as $300. Earning a living in this way has the advantages of independence and variety, but the disadvantage of, just say I've done some things that made my flesh crawl and my insides cringe. A case in point was a sweater ad. A photographer offered $300, the largest fee I'd ever gotten up to that time, if I'd simply recline on a couch decorated in this particular brand of sweater. Seems simple. It wasn't. The ad was being prepared for Playboy, therefore I was to be nude. How else in Playboy? I agreed to do the ad, for I needed the money very badly. The photographer agreed that no one would be in the studio except himself. When I arrived for the shooting, the studio looked like the Democratic National Convention. No, like a certain gathering in good old New Brunswick. To the 24 men present, I was a life-size lollipop. I spoke to the photographer. You said you'd be alone. I know, don't worry. Don't worry? Just get ready. I'll get rid of them. I went into the dressing room and disrobed. Now, the blouse, please. Off. I donned a robe and a black wig I had been instructed to wear. When I reappeared on the set, the crowd, if anything, was larger. I refused to pose. Look, Sir, these people have a right to be here. They're from the agency, the advertiser, the... I don't give a damn. I'm not going to pose. He sighed and looked unhappy, then began to holler for everyone to leave the room. There was a chorus of grumbling and muttering, and how comes, and I got a right to be here, and I ain't gotta leaves. But gradually the mob scene was reduced to a mere group. The photographer looked at me plaintively. This was the best he could do. I hesitated. I felt ready to compromise a little. $300 is $300. But I had spotted one guy in particular, a fat, sloppy, corrupt-looking character chomping on an obese cigar. He had to go. I never said a word, but I stared at him, trying to let him know I thought he was a sloppy, fat, corrupt-looking character. He stared back. I guess he was saying, "Kid, I can buy a dozen like you." Then he slowly turned away and stalked out of the studio. I did the ad. I'm sure the half dozen or so wide-eyed guys were disappointed. Still wearing my robe, I lay on the couch face down and then threw off the robe, pulling one of the sweaters over my fanny as I did so. All anybody saw was a lot of back. I felt no sense of triumph, however, only shame. I was glad to be wearing the long black wig. Maybe no one would recognize me. I sure didn't feel like myself. Mostly I felt as I had with Quaker Mary and her Kleenex. What the hell was I doing here? There could be no possible pretense of art. This was rank. Just rank. I promised myself I'd never do it again, and I haven't. There are special perils in being a freelance model. The biggest peril is the photographer. I don't want to malign the profession. There are excellent photographers, dedicated artists, doing a job and concentrating upon it. But there are other photographers who just say they aren't even subtle. You want the job, Saray? Then come over early. We'll go to bed. It has to be understood he is busy. He hasn't time for romance. He's discovered that the direct approach is quickest and most likely to succeed, I guess. Such a guy is a problem. The fellow who'd said this to me less than 2 weeks ago, as this is written, happens to be a leading photographer. Knowing him and working for him is money in the bank for a freelance model. He can do a lot for her, or he can hurt her. He knows it, and he does not hesitate to take advantage of it. What do you do? Indignantly hang up the phone and avoid the landlord? Or do you hop into bed with him and think of a far place? What I did was take a calculated risk. I needed the money. I needed his reputation. So I appeared at his studio, combat ready. I lied a lot. I told him he was really kind of attractive and some other time I might just love it. But gee, today was absolutely out of the question. I have a very flexible... Just say I'm a nice, irregular girl. I flirted. I kept moving. I made promises. Call me later. Call me tonight. Call me. Just call me. And I got away with it. Fun, jolly fun. If I can cite this as a recent occasion in which I used my head, I must confess it wasn't always so. In the beginning, I was a photographer's mark, and anybody who owns a box camera is a photographer. I guess I was the Shutter Boys' second Tuesday. Consider Jim Taylor, as I'll call him. Good old Jim Taylor. I met Jim Taylor in August 1967 while doing another job. To help with the chronology, this was shortly after I left the Playboy Club to begin a modeling career. I was still doing Playboy promotions. I was green as grass about modeling and dumb as... there isn't anything as dumb. Jim Taylor offered to take some shots for my book, the collection of photographs every model carries. Now, that was generous of him. I was endeavoring to get photos for my book, but it was expensive. To get some free photos would be very helpful. I went to Jim Taylor's apartment to pose. He was very nice, very gentlemanly, very professional. Sorry, dear reader, this isn't a seduction story. Jim had other things in mind. He took a lot of photographs, and it was all very pleasant. Very relaxed. He even served drinks. I don't really know what it was, but it was some kind of yellow drink, and he really pushed them. Every time I changed a pose, he was putting a full glass in my hand. I won't say I was drunk, but I was hardly going to volunteer for a breathalyzer test. Bill thought I might need some cheesecake photos. That was true. A girl has to show that she can look sexy. So some clothes began to come off, then some more clothes, and finally, back at the old stand. Boobies up, tummy in, fanny out. Okay, so I've already called myself all those things. 9 months later, in June 1968, a friend called me into his office, told me to sit down, and spread before me a copy of Blank magazine. There were 9 black and white and full color photographs of me, several of them nude, awful pictures, disgusting, revolting. I went home in a state of shock. I'd never seen these pictures before. I couldn't remember when they were taken. They were clearly me, but where, when? The who I knew. Jim Taylor was identified as the photographer, but I hadn't seen him in months. Then I remembered the previous summer. I'm not going to say more about this incident. I consulted a lawyer and am planning to bring suit against the magazine and Taylor. I never authorized these photographs. I was never paid, although Taylor sent over $100 after I called him to complain. The suit probably won't go anywhere. I obviously did pose for the photographs, and having been a playmate, how could my reputation be damaged? Even if a jury believed me, they'd probably give me all of a nickel. I guess all I'm going to get out of it is my private rage, regrets, and the education. But let me say this, if anyone has ever wondered where the cheapy magazines get the girls for the skin pictures, they now know where one girl was gotten. Photographers are not the only peril in freelance modeling. Within a week of this writing, I've had 2 very big scenes. The first was with a Hollywood agent, a big agent, a reputable agent. The appointment was set up by a friend who arranges many bookings for me. Go see this fellow. If he likes you, he could do a lot of good for you. My friend wasn't pimping. He was thinking of me. And he believed, as I did, that the agent's address was an office. It was a hotel room. I'm sure the agent was really a nice man. He was in his late 50s, prosperous, well set up, and not bad looking. I'm sure he had a wife, perhaps daughters my age. He wore a Rotary Club emblem. I went in the room. He was very polite, inviting me to sit. We discussed business, briefly. My career, my ambitions, my talent, my experience, etc. He apparently was hard of hearing, for soon he was sitting beside me. Then he must have developed a chill, for he put his arm around me. Then he tried to kiss me. I got up. He got up. I retreated across the room. He advanced and grabbed me. We struggled, and he missed with a sloppy kiss. He smelled of pastrami. He wanted me to go to bed. I refused. He pleaded. I said, hell no. He begged. I said, what the hell's the matter with you? I said worse than that. What makes you think you can fuck every girl who walks in here? He understood that language. I said I didn't like him or want him. I said he was a creep. I said he ought to be ashamed of himself. I said a whole lot more. He took off his pants and his underpants and stood there with his thing hanging out below his shirt and his socks falling down around his ankles. I guess the sheer sight of his thing was supposed to infuse me with a paroxysm of passion. I started to leave. He barred the door. He grabbed me and threw me down on the bed. He crawled on top. I pushed and struggled and kicked and called him every vulgar word I'd ever heard. I got away from him and across the room, still scalding him with my tongue. He sat there on the bed, defeated, his thing wasted. He said, I feel awfully silly sitting here this way. Why aren't you nice to me? Why don't you take your clothes off? I love you. I want you. I left the room. Within a week, so help me, my friend the booking agent arranged for me to see a Hollywood producer who was in town casting a movie. I mean to say this was an extremely large producer, a man who is a household word Let me try that again. Within a week, so help me, my friend the booking agent arranged for me to see a Hollywood producer who was in town casting a movie. I meant to say I messed that up again. I mean to say this was an extremely large producer, a man who was a household word in America. What producers were household words in America in 1969? Comment below. He is a man about 60, heavy set but very dignified, very polished, very. He doesn't work out of hotel rooms. He maintains an office in Manhattan. I went there. I walked in. He didn't invite me to sit. You're lovely, adorable, he said, coming around his desk to greet me. I said, hello. He said, you're so sweet. I just have to touch you. He bent over and kissed me. I stood there in a state of shock. Come over here on the couch and let's make love. He took me by the arm and started to pull me after him. I finally got over my shock. What are you doing? Let go of me. I'm not going to make love to you. And all the rest of it. Sweetheart, you have to understand, I don't usually act this way, but there's something about you. You're so little, so sweet, so innocent. I just have to touch you. I can't help myself. Ugh. Oh God. I know this is hard to believe. I realize it reads like I'm making it up. I'm not. This is exactly what happened. I must say, things worked out better with the producer than the agent. Maybe that's why he is a producer and not an agent. I adamantly refused to go to bed with him. We had a few struggles, then he calmed down, and we ended up having an appropriate business discussion about his new picture. He said he was really interested in casting me for a small part. I also understand the sun is going to rise in the west tomorrow. I don't get it. I don't know why it happens. But in 3 years in America, I've learned. If I hopped on the couch with the producer or the agent, or the photographer or the casting director, I'd have no chance at all. I don't have much chance anyway, but the couch means, I guess everybody knows what the couch means. And all this time you thought people sat on couches. I don't mean to say that the life I live on the fringes of show business is all bad. There are lots of people besides the creeps. I have friends. Several people have tried to help me. I've had fun and some grand experiences. A case in point is Johnny Carson. I know he won't remember me. I suspect he'll think I'm just name dropping. But he isn't the Theodore Roosevelt or Humphrey or James B. Lansing of this book. I appeared in 3 of Johnny Carson's skits, the Mighty Carson Art Players, as he calls them. In one, I sat in the audience as a foil for El Mundo, played by Johnny. He was telling fortunes. He called out 38, 22, 36. I stood up and called out, that's the combination to my safe. In the second skit, Johnny was Whistler and he was painting me. I wore a green bikini. In the third, I was Bubbles in a skit spoofing Ted Mack's Amateur Hour. I was one of 4 or 5 contestants, which included Mr. Mack playing the clarinet. I wore the smallest of miniskirts and twirled the baton. I was lousy, real typecasting for me, and hit Johnny on the head with the baton. He declared me the winner over Ted Mack. My point in citing these roles is that they were fun to do. Johnny Carson is what he is paid to be, funny. He was nice to me. There are nice people. A lot of them. I believe that, or I wouldn't be writing this book. This is written, I have just observed my 21st birthday. I live alone in a nice, somewhat expensive 3-room apartment on Manhattan's East Side. It is unfurnished, literally. I have a small bed which serves a dual purpose. I use the mattress as intended. The box springs are in the living room and make a quite functional table. The only other piece of furniture is a somewhat suspect couch. Stylistically, I guess you could refer to it as sort of Danish dated. I'm sure it came from Aalborg. I live simply with 2 pieces of furniture. I live simply with my 2 pieces of furniture, my complete set of binders for Playboy magazines, all empty, my 1 knife and 2 forks, a spoon, 4 assorted plates, and 1 saucepan, cup size, a plastic ice cube tray, and a set of glasses presented to me by the class of 1957, Harvard School of Business. Hi there, fellas. There are assorted other knickknacks, gadgets, and souvenirs. As soon as I get the funds, I intend to decorate the apartment. I have great ideas, and it should be fun. My phone rings often. Some are business calls, but most are from friends, men. I have no shortage of dates. I don't spend very many lonesome evenings. I date a variety of men. Some are photographers, actors, agents, and others associated with my work. Then there are young men in business or the professions or students. I try to avoid what I call the playboy type, but that is not altogether possible. The dates afford a variety of activities, from a quiet evening studying Hindu philosophy, which I do with one friend, to discothequing and cocktail parties. I have fun, I guess. I like the fellows I go out with, but I'm not emotionally involved with any of them. I'm not about to get married. There are a couple of reasons for this. For one, I have a strong feeling that some important, exciting events are going to take place in my life. I'd like to allow them to happen, for better or for worse. The other reason is that I've yet to meet anyone I'd even remotely consider marrying. Except during those moments when I look upon marriage as a daring adventure, like smoking pot or wearing a see-through blouse. You see, I've learned a lot about men and myself, the hard way, admittedly. In my 3 years in America, I've been making a basic mistake with men. A dumb mistake, I know. I suspect every other girl grew up knowing it instinctively, but then maybe not every girl. I'd meet a man like him, be infatuated with him, and just say that I've learned that, well, when sex comes early in a relationship, it gets in the way of love, taking the place of the talking and doing and sharing and mutual respect and admiration and just liking a person, all of which, and a great deal more, I guess, adds up to love. I've described some of my misadventures in the past, for I felt they were a part of the Playmate story. What I do today is my business alone, but I will say this. Ever since Louis and that night in Miami, I've had a different attitude towards sex. That kind, evil man taught me, put it this way, I have less need. Before Louis, I was looking for love and romance, to be sure, but also for proof of womanhood. I looked, perhaps not in the wrong places, but certainly among the wrong people. Boys will be boys, won't they? Thanks to Louis, I know I'm a woman. Thanks to Louis, I've developed a kind of radar for a real man. I can spot the fantasy people, the playboys. Can I ever? Oh, I'm still looking for love and romance. I still haven't gotten over my dream. I'm still looking for him. Well, maybe tomorrow. Sorry, guys. What did I get out of being a playmate? I got $2,500. I figured I earned the money I was paid for being a bunny and for doing the promotions. There were no other tangible advantages. One West Coast recording company did call inquiring about my musical talents. I insisted I was the Joan Baez of Oslo, but they never called back. That was it. No screen tests, no movie roles, no nothing. I didn't find fame and fortune by taking off my clothes. Rather, I found, professionally, that taking my clothes off was a huge disadvantage. Being a playmate typecast a girl. Having posed nude, I'm seen as a girl with the zipper at the ready. It took me a while to discover this. I was Miss Dum Dum about my Playboy association at first. When I'd go for an interview and the photographer would ask for a reference, I'd proudly announce that I'd been a playmate. I'd even carried the centerfold in my book. It hadn't occurred to me at that time that having been a playmate was the kiss of death. that no reputable advertiser would even think of using a playmate, and that I was merely issuing an invitation to every creep in town to crawl freak. It hadn't occurred to me at that time that having been a playmate was the kiss of death, that no reputable advertiser would even think of using a playmate, and that I was merely issuing an invitation to every creep in town to crawl out of the woodwork. Then one day, a very nice man, I don't even remember his name, was looking at my book. He saw the centerfold and said, "You better get rid of that. It'll do you no good." He was a knowledgeable, experienced casting director. I know he was trying to help me, and he did. I took the photo out of my book and stopped telling people of my Playboy association. Unfortunately, too many people knew it already. Being a playmate is a kiss of death. I know this is the common experience of many ex-playmates. They shed their apparel thinking they are launching a career in showbiz or modeling, that producers and agents will be knocking on their door. The knocks come all right, but there's a couch in every room. Playboy maintains the fiction that playmates go on to fame and fortune. In the Playmate Review in the January 1967 issue, which introduced me to interior decorators Sue Bernard, was said to have completed her first filmic starring role in Stranger in Hollywood and was sharpening her thespian skills on a Los Angeles stage. Judy Tyler, generously endowed Miss January, has sequeled her centerfold appearance with various modeling ventures, says Judy, who had an abbreviated fling in movies when she was 4. Modeling satisfies a girl's desire to be in the spotlight. Sue Denberg gave proof positive of the charm she displayed in the Warner Brothers production of An American Dream. Lisa Baker is keeping her fingers crossed, awaiting the results of a recent screen test. Diane Chandler. Since the 19-year-old set designer opted for Playboy's center stage, everything's been coming up roses. She received a screen test offer from London photographer, producer David Connolly. "Stardom's a long way off," says Diane, "but I never imagined I would become a playmate either." In the 15 years of skin production in Playboy, only one playmate has gone on to become a movie star. Stella Stevens, and she has been quoting as saying that her nude photos hurt her career. Playboy will take umbrage at this, claiming both Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield as ex-playmates. Marilyn's famous calendar photo was the nude in the first issue of Playboy, but she was already a major star when the photo appeared. Jane Mansfield, who was a playmate in 1955, was already a national figure, having received tremendous publicity and movie roles. There have been several playmates who have reached the starlet category. Sue Williams, among others, appeared in some of the Beach movies, under another name. Still others have appeared in various movies and TV shows. So have I, but the careers never go anywhere. 2 recent playmates are trying to break the string of flops. Anne Randall and Angela Dorian, the 1968 Playmate of the Year. Angela is under a long-term contract, but she was fairly well established before she agreed to pose nude. I, for one, hope she becomes a star. Among models, only 1 or 2 have made it, but there is a top model in New York who is an ex-playmate. But I know she had a very difficult time and got ahead only by changing her name and hiding her playmate past. I won't embarrass her by identifying her here. Nude photographs in Playboy have been the kiss of death for many an established actress. So how can an unknown girl expect to do better? Whatever happened to Anita Ekberg, Ursula Andress, Carol Lindley, Kim Novak, Diana Dors, Mamie Van Doren, Carol Baker, Arlene Dahl, Joan Collins, Tina Louise, and Julie Newmar, to name a few? It can be argued that there were other circumstances that caused the decline in their careers, and that the good ladies posed nude when they were already on their way down. But it has to be admitted that showing it all in Playboy hardly did them any good. I don't know what the psychology is. Perhaps when men have seen a woman nude, the mystery is gone and they lose interest. I understand I understand the great strippers, such as Gypsy Rose Lee and Anne Corio, used this principle, never taking everything off, and lasted for decades, long after their physical prime. If so, then the current sex symbol, Raquel Welch, is being nothing but smart and refusing to pose nude. If being a playmate brought me no tangible assets other than $2,500, am I sorry I did it? I wish it hadn't happened, yet I'm not sorry it did. My whole Playboy association, bunny, playmate, Playboy promoter, changed me. I've learned, I've grown, I've developed. The girl who got off the plane from Oslo or dispensed sodas at the Flick Bears The girl who got off the plane from Oslo or dispensed sodas at the Flick bears little resemblance to the girl who quite recently coped with the pantsless agent or the impassioned producer. If knowing how to take care of yourself in the big world is desirable, and I think it is, then Playboy gets some of the credit. It might be argued that I paid a high price in self-respect and in respect of others. I know, having been a playmate, just say, I know. But there are advantages to lack of respect. I know who I am. I'm not a phony. I don't pretend. How could I? But the biggest advantage to my Playboy misadventures can be summed up in one word: survival. I did it, I learned from it, I endured it, I survived it. Don't say that's not much. Today I'm a girl who knows no fear. I go anywhere, I do anything I want, for not much worse can happen to me. I've got stamina, guts, and when a person, has stamina and fearlessness and when a person has stamina and fearlessness and strives for difficult goals, well, she just might make it. So, Mr. Hefner, get on your rotatable bed and write another installment. Tell how through your magazine and your clubs you provide a crucible where young girls, burned, to be sure, are either destroyed or remade into something of value. That you can brag about. When I started this book, I said I had a personal motive, hoping that in the telling of it I would come to understand myself and find myself. Now, at the end, I don't know if that has happened. Like everyone else, I'm several people, and I don't yet know them all. But I do know this. For a long time, I'd had something stuck in my throat. I guess you could call it a lump. Or maybe it was a bunny bone. Anyway, thanks to this telling, the lump is gone. Having said all this, no matter what others may think, I feel lighter and freer, and I guess I feel I'm not really a bad person. I've tried to be light and funny and good-natured wherever possible. Sunny road in the middle of the city, that's me. So, let's end with an appropriate thought. When I was a child, there was a moral to every story. There's a moral to this one. Your famous American writer Mark Twain said it many years ago. He said, "Clothes make the man. Naked people have little or no influence in society. Believe me, I wear size 5. And that's the end of the book. Well, that was a interesting ending. The next page is an ad for a truly provocative and gripping novel, The Movie Maker. Only $1.25. Huh. Well, that is that, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this book. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to do like a recap kind of video discussing the whole overall thing, let me know also in the comments, because I'm definitely interested to do that. I love this book. I love Saray Marsh, and if you guys can find anything else on her, Saray Marsh, Solveig Mellenborgen is her real name. The last thing we know, she turned 21. So that's the last piece of evidence that I have about her and have been able to find. I think she might have maybe moved back to her home country. I'm not sure. I don't know. I hope not, because I feel like she wouldn't have wanted to, but I really can't find anything else on her. I'm gonna try to find those appearances on the show that she just mentioned. I think that'll be really cool if I can find clips of her. So if I do, I will definitely share them here and show you guys. But we will talk more about this soon. Thank you so much for listening. Please give my channel a follow if you haven't already. And I will talk to you soon. Have sweet dreams.